Welcome back to Southern Haunts, and thanks for tuning in to this week's episode. I want to start off this episode by giving a shout out to Carmen, my newest patron over on Patreon. Thanks for your monthly donation, Carmen, and supporting the show. If you would like to be like Carmen and hear your name on the show and get ad-free versions of this episode and bonus episodes, you can always find that over at patreon.com/southernhaunts-podcast. And one more thing, if you're a fan of Oh, That's a Scary Movie, then make sure you listen to this next announcement. Because of its growing audience, and to make it a bit easier to find, Oh, That's a Scary Movie is getting its own show and podcast feed. If you're not familiar, these are episodes that I've been doing with my best friend Nathan and my husband Ryan, talking about our favorite scary movies. So if you don't want to miss an episode of Oh, That's a Scary Movie, be sure to subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're listening on, or at the link in the show notes below. The episode on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre will be dropping July 29th, so make sure you subscribe to the new Oh, That's a Scary Movie podcast feed. Now, let's get started. There once was a woman named Carolann Smith who rocked the town of Tulsa nearly 80 years ago when it was discovered that she was keeping two women captive, literally, under her spell. I'm Ashley McLaughlin, and I'm going to tell you a scary story. This is Southern Haunts. The strange tale of Tulsa's Hex House riveted Tulsa long after Mrs. Smith hexed two women and stole all of their money. 51-year-old Carolann Smith stunned the public and fascinated the media. In 1944, she was living at 10 East 21st Street with a woman named Virginia Evans, who was 31, and another woman who was 30, a Mrs. Willetta Herber. The two women claimed they had been hexed by Smith into living with her and, quote, hypnotized and mesmerized into giving Carolann their paychecks at the end of every week. Willetta Horner also claimed she and Mrs. Smith had a mother-daughter type relationship, which she was bewitched into. And I'm not sure which is creepier, the fact that they were hexed into giving up all their money and living with a strange old woman, or that she bewitched them into this weird, motherly relationship. The women were also forced to cook and clean for Carolann, basically becoming servants under Smith's spell. After being discovered, Carolann was dubbed by the Tulsa Tribune as a, quote, she Svengali, due to Smith also getting her greedy hands on $17,000 from Virginia Evans' father, after lying about some kind of medical care for Virginia. It was soon discovered that hexing innocent women and stealing their money wasn't her only pastime or source of income. Carolann also had a habit of taking out very large life insurance policies on people, including her late husband, her father, and a longtime maid, who all conveniently died once the ink was dry on the policies. Carolann's hexing was discovered after her neighbors reported a mysterious midnight burial they spied in her yard. This led the police to dig up two small coffins containing the remains of dogs. They also found two women she had stashed in the basement. When the authorities searched her home, they found that Carolann lived in pure luxury. The house was full of expensive perfumes, a $250 silverware set just for her, 46 pairs of shoes, 18 pairs of gloves, 26 hats, and enough makeup and beauty supplies to stock the local drugstore. Meanwhile, the two women she had captured had been made to sleep on orange crates in a cold basement, wearing nothing but threadbare nightgowns, and were denied any kind of hygiene products, let alone makeup. They had been starved, beaten, and made to live in disgusting conditions, while Smith was living in a lavish lifestyle upstairs. The media ate up the story, to say the least, and many rumors swirled around what exactly went on inside the Hex House. The Tulsa World, which is extremely hard to say, said there was a shocking discovery that, quote, tends to bear out the sex angle. The discovery was never revealed, and the story was most likely fabricated to sell papers. After her 3-day trial, Carolann Smith was found guilty of forcing the two women in her home to falsely testify against a neighbor, and was sentenced to a year in prison. In a strange turn of events, Smith pleaded guilty to another set of charges just 1 month after her sentencing. This time, it was for defrauding the mail system. Apparently, she made false statements to obtain wartime rations under the name of her bulldog, Bon Bon. What a woman. So was Carolann Smith some sort of witch? Or used some kind of black magic to hold two women hostage and do her housekeeping? Well, that's what the locals will tell you. The Hex House was eventually sold and demolished. The grounds were later turned into a parking lot for the Akdar Shrine Temple. The original steps can still be seen, however, on 21st Street. And legend has it, the old basement is fully intact under the parking lot, in the same condition as when the police discovered the two women. Today, Tulsa's Hex House is an infamous haunted house, inspired by the strange and terrifying story of Carolann Smith. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. If you're looking for more Southern Haunts, you can always find that over at patreon.com/Southern Haunts Podcast. And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the show. And be sure to subscribe to Oh, That's a Scary Movie on Spotify and soon Apple Podcasts and wherever you listen to podcasts. You can send your spooky story to southernhaunts.podcast@gmail.com. And don't forget, all of these episodes can be found on my YouTube channel if you want to watch me tell you a scary story. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next week.